20% of their population left. 3.6 million people left East Germany. So they built a wall. Now, was that because, were people trying to get out of East Germany because there were too many Bible studies? Because there were too many Christian pastors preaching? Is that they were trying to get out? No, they hated the place. No freedom, no ability to express themselves. And that night, on the September 15th, 1979, two East German families, the Strelzics, if I'm saying that correctly, and the Wetzels, faced an incredible challenge. The challenge was how to escape East Germany. Some of you know the story. They had tried before. They had built a balloon. Can you imagine being that desperate to get out of there? You have to build a balloon yourself out of material. And they got a certain type of dress, and their first attempt failed because it was too porous and all the hot air went through. They couldn't get out. And they tried another time and managed to burn the balloon. Another time they tried, they got almost all the way out, but they got into a cloud. They ascended into a cloud, and the cloud added a lot of moisture to the weight of the balloon, and they fell just short of their goal. By this point, the East German police, the Stasi, are on their tails for the sin. Now, here's what I'm saying. It's always about a religion. There's always a sin in every society. Please understand this, my friends. The only question is who's going to define it. Their sin was trying to get out of East Germany. You've probably seen, some of you have, some of the video. It's not videotape. It's 8mm tape or whatever you used to call the movie tape of people trying to get out of East Germany. There's one of a young man who got a bulldozer. He's just trying desperately to get out of there, and he got shot up. Other people got shot for the sin. Let's call it what it is in their minds. The sin of leaving this wonderful place called the German Democratic Republic of East Germany. You see, my friends, it's always about religion. Every society is going to define a sin at some point. Who do you want defining sin? God or man? Let's talk about this a little bit more. By the way, they finally did get out. The last balloon they made, they had the searchlights on them. Listen, the entire police trying to, we heard these people are getting out. Let's do the right thing. Let's stop them. Let's shoot them right out of the sky for the horrible sin of trying to leave our, what do you call it? Oh, what's the name of those communist countries called? Workers' paradise. My friends, every society defines sin. We can't get away from religious belief. The only question is which religious belief. That's it. A few points I want to make tonight. First of all, a consistent non-Christian state cannot consistently define right and wrong. I'm going to read that again. A consistently non-Christian state cannot consistently define right and wrong. Secondly, a consistent non-Christian state will ultimately become an anti-Christian state. You want that neutrality? You're not going to have it for long. Christ said you're either for me or against me. No third way. And thirdly, a consistent non-Christian state is incapable of tolerating the force of persuasion as over against the persuasion of force. I'm going to read that again. A consistent non-Christian state is incapable of tolerating the force of persuasion as over against the persuasion of force. My first point, very quickly, a consistent non-Christian state cannot consistently define right and wrong. Some of you are familiar with Plato and Aristotle. I'm not a Plato and Aristotle guy. Haven't really read a lot of them, read a little bit, but not a lot. Do you know what Plato and Aristotle both said about slavery? You know what they said? They said, it's a fine institution. Some people are obviously born to be slaves, and some people are obviously born to be masters. Now, let me ask you something. We want to stand here in 2022 and say they were wrong. But I got a little bit of news for you. Here's a news flash. You and I are probably going to die, and 100 years after we're gone, no one's going to know we were here. But Plato and Aristotle will still be read. So who are you to judge Plato and Aristotle if you don't have a standard from God himself? Who are you to judge them? And we hear about that all the time, right? You can't judge blah, blah, blah. Well, you're judging Plato and Aristotle because they believe in slavery. But who are you? Based on your worldview. And why should I believe you? They got a lot more ink than you'll ever get. Maybe not you, but definitely me, than I'll ever get. No, a consistent non-Christian state cannot possibly consistently define right and wrong, because you see, the word of man, it's a loose leaf notebook, right? Right? Today's law is going to undermine yesterday's law, and we can keep changing. The Bible, not a loose leaf notebook. Forever, O Lord, your word is settled in heaven. Settled in heaven just like it's settled on earth. Now, you can believe it or not believe it, but you can not believe in gravity, and you can explain to me how gravity doesn't work on your way with jumping off a 20-story building. Maybe I'll stop by story number 10, and you can explain to me that gravity doesn't exist because you don't believe in it. I hear this all the time, but I don't believe in God. That like causes God to disappear, right? Because I don't believe in him. Obviously, he's gone now. Now, as we heard, he is the ruler of the kings of the earth. Do you know that's how he introduces, Jesus Christ introduces himself that way in the book of Revelation? John sees him, and he's introduced as the ruler of the kings of the earth. Now, as a pastor, I'm told that I'm not supposed to talk about politics. I'm just supposed to tell people how to get to heaven. You know what? The Bible also tells you how to live on earth. And you know what? Jesus Christ saying he is the ruler of the kings of the earth is a very political statement. The kings have a king. They have someone they have to listen to. They will answer to him. Listen to me, my friends. Every single civil magistrate, I don't care, dog catcher, governor, whomever, all will answer to Christ as a magistrate. They don't get like a break, right? Oh, well, I'm in my office of civil magistrate. I get to do what I want. No. God demands justice for all. No one gets a break. I hear this one all the time, right? Give to Caesar things that are Caesar, God things, as if Caesar has his little department, right? And over here, the spiritual realm, here's God, right? And God has nothing to do with Caesar. Caesar has to bow to Christ just like everybody else. Moving on, a consistent non-Christian state will ultimately become an anti-Christian state. I'm barely old enough. I was born in 1957. I remember just barely the landmark case, right? We're not going to have prayer and Bible reading in public schools anymore because that would be an establishment of religion. We can't do that. So let's throw that out. Well, what's happened now? Did we even have the option to say that prayer and Bible reading has no place in public education? What's public education looking like now? You know, I got to ask you something. I had the opportunity to read. I was very fortunate. I had 4 sons. Thought we couldn't have daughters. Then we had three daughters in a row, and then thought we couldn't have sons anymore. Then had 2 sons. Anyway, so what was good about it was that the 3 daughters were right together. And so I was able to read the entire Little House on the Prairie series to my daughters, the entire series, okay? Sometime when you get a chance, do this. Towards the end, there's the Farmer Boy, I think, is the last in the series, and the second last in the series is the first 4 years, when Laura Ingalls grows up and she becomes a teacher. Sometime get a hold of that book and read what Laura had to know to be a teacher of 1st and 2nd graders, and what she knew as a 6th grader. I can tell you that college students don't know what she knew with a 6th grade education right then. But us geniuses have thrown out the best-selling book of all time, the Bible, and we call ourselves smart. Wow. Now, come on. What's going on in our public schools today is anti-Christian. You see, once you throw out God and his word and say you're neutral, something else rushes into the vacuum. and I know a little bit of public education, you can have all kinds of different religious holidays going on there and all kinds of celebrations, but guess what's one you don't get to do? No. A consistently anti-Christian state, a consistent non-Christian state will ultimately become anti-Christian. We've seen it in front of our eyes. It's going on. Number 3, a consistent non-Christian state is incapable of tolerating the force of persuasion as over against the persuasion of force. I want to address this a little bit here. I want to talk about this. If there's no such thing as moral persuasion, then we're only left with brute force. Am I correct about that? You know, I'm the king, what I say goes. I can change my mind tomorrow, or I can be like Joseph Stalin. I can say, you guys are dead and you guys are dead. I'll let you guys live and you guys over here get to be killed, whatever. How do we do this? How do we understand that there is such a thing as a moral position that must be taken no matter who you are, what century you were born in, or what country you live in? Is there such a thing? And we are arguing tonight that there absolutely is, because there is a God who created the entire world, and he has given us his law. That's what we're arguing. Now, I want to talk about this thing of persuasion of force or force of persuasion. I want you to hear what this particular writer has to say. He says this, he says, historically, law, which we like to see as the expression of justice, has been very commonly seen as an injustice. Anybody see what I'm talking about? Yeah, we had riots in 2020. Remember that? Burning down buildings, murdering people, right? What was it called by a lot of people? It was called justice. Shame on them all. Now, how can I say that with such authority? Because I have a lawgiver. Moving on. The royal law in India for centuries was exploitive of the peoples and was seen as oppressive. Still the law, though. One aging missionary who had a contact with an elderly Chinese who had seen the rules of the empress, the republic, and the communists asked them about the difference from one regime to another as they affected them, the peasants. Their answer was that all things were essentially the same. Quote, all masters want their will and our work. That's not us, of course. When's tax liberation day nowadays? July, August, I don't even know. Their will and our work. Yeah. We get to work, and they get to say what happens to the money that we earn for them. Theoreticians of the law like to see it as equivalent to justice. During most of history, men have seen it as the oppressive will of the masters. I want to stop there for a minute. What Chris said is something we have to take home with us. If you just think the law is the law and it's right no matter what, how can you possibly judge the law? Think about that for a minute. If it's the law and whatever they said is right, then there's nothing wrong with what is right because they're automatically right. On what basis can you possibly judge this or question it? Here I want to talk about the persuasion or the force of persuasion. Ancient Israel was an exception to this idea that whoever is the biggest gets to make the law. Lawmaking was recognized in times of faithfulness as God's prerogative, not man's, and God had revealed his covenant law through Moses. This law was defended and expounded by the prophets, and it was binding for the king and the people. Nathan's indictment of King David. Let me stop there for a second. We're talking about the force of persuasion. If King David is the most powerful guy in the world, he's a pretty powerful guy. He had this commander guy named Joab, and Joab never lost a battle. Maybe not a guy you want to mess with. Who's this prophet Nathan going and tell him he's wrong? Going and tell him to his face. He is a liar and an adulterer and a murderer. Who does that? How can this be? David's king. Just kill that guy who called me a liar, murderer, adulterer. Just kill him. Didn't happen though. Listen to what this writer says. Nathan the prophet, his indictment of King David, one of a long series of such confrontations, was without parallel in antiquity. Where do you see that in antiquity other than in the Old Testament Israel, where a prophet of God goes and tells off a king and lives to tell about it? See, we're talking tonight about the force of persuasion. That's what we're left with in a Christian society. See, here's how it works, my friends. God has given the church the role of the ministry of grace and the forthtelling of the word. It is the job of the church to tell the government how to govern, but it's not the job of the church to make them do what they say. It's the job to be a conscience for them. The church has the ministry of the word. The state has the ministry of the sword. Once you take the church out of the action, all you're left with is the sword, my friends. And 70 million dead babies would tell you that that's the case here. Amen? Yeah. 70 million dead babies have felt the persuasion of force. And it's in large part because, without getting into it too deeply, because the Church of Jesus Christ has made peace with this wickedness.
Yes, that's right.
Shame, 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 shame. My friends, I challenge you to see any society that understands this point outside of Christianity. Oh yeah, there's always going to be sins. Somebody's going to define sins. Who's going to define it? The eternal Word of God, which is settled in heaven, which, by the way, will be here long after I'm dead, was here long before I was born, or the loose-leaf notebook of the changing opinions of man. I want to wrap up by just making a brief point here. A lot of us know Acts 4:12, where Peter courageously faced down both the civil authorities and the ecclesiastical authorities of his day that told him to be quiet. And he said this, he said, "Neither is there salvation in any other, for there is no other name given under heaven, given among men, whereby we must be saved." You know what he was doing? He wasn't making something up out of thin air. You know what he was doing? He was quoting Caesar Augustus. Caesar Augustus had recently said before that there is no other name other than Caesar Augustus whereby men must be saved. That's what he was saying. And Peter was making a statement. Now let's just say that since Peter, what would we say to Peter today? Peter, there's another way to say this. Okay, you don't have to stick a knife in his eye. Peter understood something that we don't understand today. Christ is king over Caesar Augustus too, even if he was the most powerful man in the world at that time. Where are you this evening? Have you bowed your knee to Christ? If you haven't done that, do that. Do that immediately, because he will judge the living and the dead. And you can run to him in mercy today, or he will face you, or you will face him as your judge later on. And that message, what I just said, is okay in a lot of churches. What's not okay is saying that these civil magistrates will face that same judge. They don't get a break just because they got elected to something or appointed to something. I want to thank you all for your kind attention here this evening. We'll take some questions now.